They say curiosity killed the cat. But some doors should never be opened, some attractions should never be visited, and some games should never be played. Tonight, I share with you 2 tales from my collection. Stories of those who thought they were clever enough to solve any puzzle, brave enough to face any challenge. They were wrong. So, settle in, dear listener. Turn off the lights. And remember, not every game has a winner.
My name is Sarah Chen. I'm a data analyst. I'm rational, scientific. I don't believe in ghosts or whatever this is, but I can't explain what happened to me last month, and I need to tell someone before it's too late, before I lose myself completely. It started with an Instagram ad, appeared on my feed at exactly 3:17 a.m. while I was researching my sister's disappearance. Jenny vanished during a Wisconsin Dells trip 6 months ago. No trace, no leads, just gone. I'd been awake for 36 hours straight, scrolling through missing person databases, police reports, anything that might give me a clue. My eyes were burning, my vision blurring, but I couldn't stop. I couldn't give up on her. That's when the ad appeared. The ad was sleek, professional. Grand opening, free weekend stay at Cascade Lagoon Water Park Resort. First 50 guests only. Lodging, food, and unlimited access to the park. All free. No catch. But here's the thing that should have terrified me immediately. The ad used a photo of Jenny, not as the model or anything obvious, but in the background, barely visible, standing by a pool, was my sister, wearing the same clothes she'd disappeared in. I screenshot the ad, zoomed in. It was definitely her, but that was impossible. The ad was for a grand opening, a new resort. So how was Jenny in a promotional photo taken after she'd vanished? I should have known something was wrong immediately. The ad felt targeted, like it was watching me. When I clicked through, it said I was guest number 47. Then I refreshed. 32, then 15. The number kept changing, but I was too desperate to care. See, the confirmation email had Jenny's middle name in it, Marie, a name I never gave them, but it also had other details that made my blood run cold. It mentioned my childhood fear of drowning. It referenced the scar on my left knee from when I was 7. It knew about the nightmare I'd been having since Jenny disappeared, the one where I'm swimming in dark water and something grabs my ankle. The email ended with a single line that made me pack immediately. Jenny is waiting for you in the deep end. I should have called the police. Should have shown someone the email. But I was so desperate to find her, so convinced this was my only lead, that I grabbed my keys and started driving. The drive took me 40 miles past the Dells, middle of nowhere. My GPS signal cut out after the first 20 miles. The radio filled with static that almost sounded like voices, whispering voices. But I kept driving because I had to, because I thought I might find Jenny there. The landscape got stranger the further I went. The trees grew too close together, their branches intertwining overhead like a canopy. The road signs were old, weathered, some in languages I didn't recognize. And there were no other cars. Not one. Just me. Alone on a road that felt like it was leading somewhere I shouldn't go. I passed a sign that read, Cascade Lagoon, 5 miles. But when I looked in my rearview mirror, the sign was gone. Just empty road behind me. The coordinates led me to an impossibly modern resort nestled between ancient pines. The architecture seemed to shift when I wasn't looking directly at it. Too perfect, too empty, like a computer rendering of what a resort should look like. But it was the silence that bothered me most. No construction sounds, no traffic, no birds, just this oppressive quiet that made my ears ring. The parking lot was nearly empty, just a few cars scattered around. I figured most people hadn't arrived yet, but something felt off about those cars. They looked old, classic models from different decades, but somehow pristine. A Tizen Keelins Venus Buick sat next to a Tizen Het Venus Oldsmobile. All perfect, all empty. I walked to the main entrance, and that's when I noticed the water. It was everywhere. Fountains, decorative pools, streams running along the walkways, all of it perfectly clear, perfectly still. But when I looked closer, I could see things moving beneath the surface, shapes that darted away when I tried to focus on them. The receptionist greeted me with an unnaturally wide smile. Her name tag read, Jenny. When I mentioned it, she just said, coincidence, and handed me a brass key that was ice cold to the touch. Room 237, the same number from The Shining. Dinner ends at sunset, she said. After that, we strongly encourage guests to remain in their rooms, for everyone's safety. Her eyes never blinked. Not once during our entire conversation. The room was luxurious, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the water park. But when I picked up the phone, there was no dial tone. Just a recording. You have 47 hours remaining. I tried my cell phone. No signal, not even emergency calls. I unpacked and noticed something that made my hands shake. There were 2 towels in the bathroom, 2 sets of toiletries, 2 bathrobes, as if they'd been expecting me to bring someone, or as if someone was already here. The first day was perfect, too perfect. The water park was massive, 5 indoor and outdoor areas, no lines, everything clean and strangely quiet. I met other guests, families, couples, all talking about how lucky they were to get in on the launch, but something was wrong with them. Their conversations looped. The same phrases, the same laughter, like they were reading from a script. A mother kept telling her son, "Don't go too deep, honey. Stay where I can see you." Every 5 minutes, the exact same words, the exact same tone. A couple kept having the same argument about sunscreen, word for word, over and over. I met a little girl who looked exactly like Jenny did when she was 8. When I asked her name, she said, "Jenny. Want to play with me, Sarah?" Her smile became predatory when I backed away. "How do you know my name?" "Everyone knows your name here, Sarah. We've been waiting for you." I looked around. All the other guests had stopped their activities. They were staring at me, all smiling, all waiting. The other guests knew things about me, personal things, things only Jenny would know. They'd mention my childhood dog's name, Rusty, my fear of deep water, the birthmark on my shoulder that I kept hidden, memories I'd never shared with anyone. But it was the children that disturbed me most. There were dozens of them, all different ages, but they all had the same eyes, Jenny's eyes, and they followed me everywhere, always staying just at the edge of my vision. "Sarah," they'd whisper. "Sarah, come play with us. Come swim with us." At the restaurant, the menu changed while I read it. Items appeared and disappeared. The food tasted like chlorine. The waiter looked exactly like my father, my dead father. "How's the meal, sweetheart?" he asked. "Mom's recipe." "My father is dead," I told him. He winked. Are you sure? That's when I noticed the photos on the restaurant walls. Family photos of guests throughout the years. But the faces, they were all wrong. The same people appeared in photos from different decades, unaged, unchanged. And there, in a frame near the back, was a photo of me and Jenny as children. But I'd never been to this place before. The photo showed us playing in the very pool I could see outside the window. At 8 p.m. exactly, everything changed. The lights dimmed, the music stopped, and everyone, guests, staff, everyone, they all turned to look at me, all smiling, all waiting. The intercom crackled. The park is now closed. Please return to your assigned rooms. Lock your doors. Do not explore after hours. Phase 2 begins at 9:13 p.m. Phase 2, they said it like I should know what that meant. I locked myself in room 237. But as I turned the deadbolt, I heard something that made my blood freeze. The sound of a second lock clicking shut. From the outside, I was trapped. At 9:13 p.m. exactly, the phone rang. I answered. Sarah? Sarah, I'm here. I'm in the pool. Come find me. Jenny's voice, my sister's voice. Jenny, Jenny, where are you? I'm waiting for you. I've been waiting so long. It's so cold here, Sarah. So dark. But you can help me. You can take my place. The line went dead. I looked out the window. The pool was empty, but I could see wet footprints leading from the water to my door. I tried the door, still locked, but as I watched, water began seeping under the door. Chlorinated water that smelled like decay. The water spread across the floor, and I could see things moving in it. Fingers, hair, fragments of faces trying to surface. I should have stayed in that room, but I couldn't. Not when I thought Jenny was there. The water had somehow unlocked the door. It swung open with a soft creak, revealing hallways bathed in underwater blue light. The walls were covered with photos, all the guests from different decades. The same faces, unaged. And there, already mounted, my own photo, next to Jenny's. That's when I realized we weren't guests. We were specimens. The hallways seemed to stretch forever. Doors lined both sides, and from behind them I could hear sounds, splashing, crying, voices calling for help. I tried some of the doors, but they were locked, except for one, room 238. Inside, the room was identical to mine, but it was flooded. Ankle-deep water covered the floor, and floating in that water were personal belongings, clothes, jewelry, photographs, all waterlogged and decaying. On the nightstand, I found a journal. The pages were soggy, but I could still read the entries. Day 1, the water tastes wrong. Day 5, I can't leave. The doors won't open. Day 12, the water is rising. Day 18, I see faces in the water. Day 23, they want me to join them. Day 30, I understand now. I'm not drowning, I'm being preserved. The entries continued for months, the handwriting getting worse, more desperate. The final entry was just 2 words, written over and over. Help me, help me, help me. I dropped the journal and backed out of the room. But as I turned to leave, I saw something that made me scream. There was someone in the water, a young woman, floating face down, her long black hair spreading around her like seaweed. She looked exactly like me. I ran. Down the hallways, past more doors, more rooms filled with water and floating shapes. The building seemed to be flooding from the inside out. Water dripped from the ceiling, ran down the walls, pooled in corners. I found a staircase and climbed, hoping to get above the waterline. But the second floor was worse. The walls were covered with missing person posters, hundreds of them, all people who'd vanished near bodies of water over the past 50 years. Jenny's poster was there. So was mine, dated tomorrow. I found an exit that led to the water park, but the park was transformed. Water ran red. The slides pulsed like arteries. Mannequins floated in the pools, but their eyes tracked my movement. The whole place was alive, feeding, and I was supposed to be the next meal. I heard splashing, turned to see dozens of figures emerging from the water, all the previous guests, preserved in chlorinated decay. Their skin was pale, waterlogged, but their eyes were aware, conscious. They moved toward me with the jerky, unnatural gait of people who'd been underwater too long. Sarah. I turned. Jenny stood there, pale, dripping, smiling, but her smile was wrong, too wide, too knowing. Jenny? Oh God, Jenny, I've been looking for you. I know, she said, tilting her head unnaturally. That's why we brought you here. You're my replacement. Replacement? Someone has to feed the pool, Sarah. Someone has to keep the water clean. I've been doing it for 6 months, but I'm getting tired. Jenny's skin began to slough off like wet paper, revealing something else underneath. Something that had once been human, but had been changed by the water, by whatever lived in the depths of this place. The water remembers everything, Sarah. Every person who's ever drowned, every soul that's ever been lost to the depths, and it's hungry, so hungry. Jenny reached for me with fingers that were too long, too pale. Come with me, sister. Come home to the deep. I ran. Through corridors lined with pipes and machinery, the walls were covered with missing person posters dating back to the 1960s. All people who visited water parks, all who disappeared. But it was the sound that followed me that was worst. The sound of wet feet slapping against tile. The sound of dozens of preserved corpses shuffling after me. And Jenny's voice, calling my name. I found a room full of personal belongings, wallets, phones, jewelry, thousands of items from thousands of victims. Jenny's purse sat on a shelf. Next to it, a journal left by a previous victim. Day 30. The chlorine keeps us preserved. Conscious. We're not dead, but we're not alive. We're maintenance. We keep the place running. We bring others. The resort wasn't new. It had been operating for decades, moving, hunting, feeding. But there was more. Pages and pages of entries from different people, different years, all describing the same thing. The thing that lived in the deepest pool. The thing that had been there long before the resort was built. I read about the original owner, a man named Marcus Thorne, who'd built the resort in 1952. He'd discovered something in the underground lake beneath the property, something old, something that promised him wealth and success if he fed it. The entries described how Thorne had lured guests to the resort, how he'd selected the ones who wouldn't be missed, how he'd fed them to the thing in the deep pool, how it had made him rich beyond his wildest dreams. But the thing had grown hungry, hungrier with each feeding, and eventually it had consumed Thorne himself. The final entry was from someone named David, dated just last month. I understand now. The thing in the pool isn't just hungry, it's lonely. It wants companions. It wants to create a family of the drowned. And once you're in the water, once you're part of its collection, you can never leave. You can only help it gather more. I heard footsteps approaching, the shuffling sound of wet feet. I grabbed Jenny's purse and ran deeper into the building. I found myself in a maintenance area I hadn't seen before. The walls were lined with pipes and gauges, all monitoring water pressure and flow. But there was something else here. A large diagram showing the resort's layout, including areas I hadn't explored. The diagram showed that the entire resort was built around a central pool. Not just any pool, but a natural underground lake that went down, impossibly deep. The diagram showed depth measurements that made no sense: 100 feet, 200, 500, 1,000, and at the very bottom, someone had written, "Here lies the drowned god." I heard them getting closer, the wet footsteps, the whispered calls of my name. Jenny's voice, but wrong, distorted by water and time. I found an exit, an old drainage pipe that led to a creek. When I climbed out, gasping, I turned back. The resort was gone. Only empty woods remained, but the silence was wrong, too complete. And when I looked at the creek, I saw that it was flowing uphill. Water doesn't flow uphill, not naturally. I followed the creek and found myself back at the resort. But now I could see it for what it truly was. Not a building, but a mouth, a feeding system. The pools were digestive chambers, the hallways were arteries, and the thing at the center, the thing in the deep pool, was the heart. I tried to run again, but the forest around me was flooding. Water seeped up from the ground, trickled down from the trees. No matter which direction I went, I ended up back at the resort, back at the water. That's when I understood. I wasn't just trapped in a building. I was trapped in a hunting ground, a web of water and will that extended for miles in every direction. I drove home, or I thought I did. But when I reached my apartment, I found it was different. Damp, water stains on the walls, the smell of chlorine in the air. And in my bathroom mirror, I could see the resort reflected behind me. I tried to call the police, but there was no record of Cascade Lagoon, no coordinates, no website, nothing. Because it wasn't really a place. It was a state of being, a condition. I thought I'd escaped, but 3 days later, I found the brass key in my pocket, and every night at 9:13 p.m., I hear splashing from my bathroom, my kitchen sink, anywhere there's water. The splashing is getting louder each night, more urgent, and I'm starting to understand what Jenny meant about replacements. I'm not just being haunted, I'm being recruited. Jenny visits me now. She appears in every reflective surface, every puddle, every drop of water. She says I can't leave. Not really. I'm tagged, marked, and soon I'll have to go back. You can't fight the water forever, Sarah, she tells me. It's in your blood now, in your lungs, in your dreams. And dreams are just the surface. The real depth is underneath. Last night, I found something on my laptop, a new Instagram ad, same resort, same offer. But this time, it said I was guest number 1. The cycle is starting again. And I'm not just a victim anymore. I'm part of the system. I've been creating the ads, sending them out, targeting people who are desperate, searching, vulnerable. I don't remember doing it, but I must be. Because who else would know exactly what to say to lure them in? The worst part is, I understand now why the resort needs fresh victims. It's not just about feeding the thing in the deep pool. It's about maintaining the illusion. The staff, all those people who've been transformed, preserved, changed, they're wearing out, decaying. They need replacements. And the replacements need to come willingly. They need to be searching for something, someone. That's why they targeted me through Jenny. That's why they're targeting others through their loved ones. I can feel myself changing. My skin is always cold now, damp. When I look in mirrors, sometimes I see water instead of my reflection. And at night, I dream of the deep pool, of swimming down, 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 until I reach the bottom where the drowned god waits. It's beautiful down there, peaceful. All the fear and pain and searching just stops. You become part of something larger, something eternal. If you're listening to this, if you ever get an ad for Cascade Lagoon, don't go, don't click, don't even read it, because once you're in the system, you never really leave. The water is calling me back. I can hear it now. Jenny's voice promising that it won't hurt, that I'll understand once I'm home, that I'll be part of the family. But I know the truth. I'm not going home. I'm going to become what Jenny became. A lure, a trap, a way to bring others to feed the thing that lives in the water. The splashing is getting louder. The key is getting colder. And I can see wet footprints leading from my bathroom to where I'm sitting. They're not just Jenny's footprints anymore. There are dozens of them. All the people who've been taken. All the ones who've been changed. They're all here, waiting for me to join them. Jenny is here. She's waiting for me to come with her. Her hand is reaching through the screen of my laptop, dripping with chlorinated water. And God help me. I think I'm going to take it. Don't look for me. Don't try to find Cascade Lagoon, because if you do, you'll end up just like me, just like Jenny, just like all the others who thought they were getting something for free. Nothing is ever free. Someone always pays the price. The water is so cold. But Jenny says it's time to come home. Time to join the family. Time to help gather others. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry for what I'm about to become, but I can't fight it anymore. The water is in my lungs, in my blood, in my soul. The pool is calling, and I have to answer. The drowned god is waiting, and I am his newest disciple. Welcome to Cascade Lagoon. We've been expecting you.
My name is Marcus Rivera. I'm 24 years old, and I used to think I was pretty smart, good at puzzles, escape rooms, that kind of thing. But what happened to me in Wisconsin Dells last weekend, it changed everything I thought I knew about reality. I was walking down the main strip on a Saturday night. You know how it is there, neon lights everywhere, families with kids running around, the smell of funnel cake and chlorine in the air. Just another tourist trap, right? I'd been to most of the attractions before. The haunted houses, the go-kart tracks, the mini golf courses, same old stuff. But then I saw something new. Tucked between a t-shirt shop and a pizza place, there was this narrow storefront I'd never noticed before. The sign read, Merlin's Gauntlet, Ultimate Wizard Hunt Experience. But it wasn't like the other cheesy attractions. This looked expensive, professional. The windows were tinted black, and there was this soft, mystical music drifting out whenever someone opened the door. A guy in a really convincing wizard costume stood outside. Long beard, staff, the whole deal. But his eyes, they were too bright, too knowing. Looking for a real challenge? He asked me. Not like those other kiddie attractions. This is for adults who think they're clever. I should have walked away. But he was right. I was bored with the usual tourist stuff. And something about the place intrigued me. The few people I saw coming out looked different, shaken, but also exhilarated, like they'd experienced something genuinely amazing. How much, I asked. $25. But fair warning, not everyone completes the gauntlet. Some people, well, they're not as smart as they think they are. He smiled, and I noticed his teeth were too sharp, but I figured it was all part of the act. The entrance led into a small lobby decorated like a medieval castle. Stone walls, torch lighting, tapestries depicting wizards and dragons. Very convincing set design. There was a desk where a woman in a hooded robe took my money and handed me a scroll. "The rules are simple," she said, in a voice that was almost a whisper. "You have 1 hour to complete the gauntlet. Follow the clues, solve the puzzles, find the 3 keys. Reach the final chamber and claim your prize." "What's the prize?" "Something you've always wanted. But first, you must prove you're worthy." She gestured to a heavy wooden door. "Beyond that door lies the first chamber. Once you enter, you cannot leave until you've completed the challenge. Or failed." I pushed open the door and stepped into what looked like a wizard's laboratory. Shelves lined with spellbooks, bubbling cauldrons, crystal balls on wooden pedestals. The attention to detail was incredible. I could smell herbs and incense, hear the crackling of a fireplace. A voice echoed from hidden speakers. "Welcome, Seeker. Your first trial awaits. Find the eye of truth, and the path forward shall be revealed." I started exploring. The books were real, filled with what looked like actual spells and incantations. The potions in the bottles swirled and glowed. Everything seemed alive. I found the first clue hidden inside a hollowed-out book. It was a riddle. "Where shadows dance and light retreats, the eye sees all that magic greets." I looked around and noticed that one corner of the room was darker than the others. When I approached, I saw a crystal orb sitting on a pedestal, pulsing with inner light. The eye of truth. The moment I touched it, the room transformed. The walls shifted, revealing a new passage. I was starting to understand. This wasn't just an escape room. This was something else entirely. The second chamber was a library. Massive bookshelves stretched up toward a vaulted ceiling. The challenge here was more complex. I had to find 3 specific books and place them in the correct order on a lectern. But as I searched, I started noticing things that bothered me. Some of the books were written in languages that didn't exist. Others seemed to move when I wasn't looking directly at them. And there were portraits on the walls, portraits of people who looked terrified. One portrait showed a young man about my age. The nameplate read, "David Chen, last seen Wisconsin Dells, 2022. Another showed a teenage girl, Sarah Martinez, missing since August 2023. I found the 3 books, Secrets of the Void, The Binding Circle, and Escape from the Endless. When I placed them on the lectern in that order, another passage opened. But something was wrong. The passages behind me, they were gone. Not just closed, gone. Like they'd never existed. And the air was getting colder. The third chamber was different, darker. The medieval theme was gone, replaced by something that felt older, more primitive. Cave-like walls covered in symbols that hurt to look at. The torches flickered with flames that cast no shadows. The voice spoke again, but it sounded different now. Deeper, more menacing. The final trial approaches. But first, you must understand the truth. This is no game, mortal. This is a hunt. And you are the prey. That's when I saw it. A door I wasn't supposed to find. Hidden behind a tapestry, barely visible in the flickering torchlight. Something made me pull it aside and try the handle. It was unlocked. Behind the door was a narrow corridor lined with bones. Human bones. And at the end of the corridor, I could see light. Real light. Fluorescent light. I crept down the corridor and found myself looking into what appeared to be a control room. Banks of monitors showing different chambers of the attraction, but they weren't showing the magical rooms I'd been in. They were showing cells, prison cells. On the monitors, I could see people, dozens of them, some sitting in corners, rocking back and forth, others pacing frantically, all of them wearing the same clothes I'd seen in those portraits, all of them looking like they'd been there for months or years. And then I saw myself on one of the monitors, standing in that control room, but the timestamp in the corner showed I'd been there for 3 days. 3 days. But I'd only been inside for maybe an hour. I heard footsteps behind me. The wizard from outside was standing in the doorway, but he wasn't in costume anymore. He was tall, impossibly thin, with skin like parchment and eyes that were just black holes. "You found the door," he said, and his voice was like grinding stone. "They always do eventually. The smart ones, the curious ones. That's why we need them." Need them for what? To feed the gauntlet, to power the magic. The attraction runs on fear, you see, on desperation, on the slow dissolution of hope. He stepped into the room, and I saw that his feet weren't touching the ground. The people in those cells, they're not prisoners. They're batteries, living sources of terror. And when they finally break, when their minds snap completely, they become part of the staff. I looked at the monitors again. Some of the people in the cells were wearing robes. They'd been the ones taking money, giving out scrolls, maintaining the illusion. "The woman at the desk," I whispered. Sarah Martinez. She lasted 6 months before she joined us. Very strong mind. "You might last even longer." I ran. Back down the bone corridor, through the tapestry, into the chamber. But now I could see it for what it really was. The symbols on the walls were moving, writhing like living things. The torches were burning with something that wasn't fire. And the voice that had been guiding me, it was laughing. "Run, little mouse. Run and hide. The hunt begins now." I tried the passages I'd come through, but they were sealed. Stone walls where doorways had been. The only way forward was deeper into the complex, into chambers I hadn't seen before. Chambers that definitely weren't part of any tourist attraction. The first one I entered was filled with mirrors. But my reflection, it wasn't right. Sometimes it moved before I did. Sometimes it showed me things I hadn't done yet. And sometimes it showed me what I would become if I didn't escape. I found a clue scratched into one of the mirror frames. "The hungry god sleeps beneath the water. Wake him not, lest he devour the daughter." I didn't understand it then, but I memorized it. I was starting to realize that the clues weren't just part of the attraction. They were warnings, messages left by previous victims. The next chamber was worse. It was designed to look like a child's bedroom, but everything was wrong. The toys moved on their own. The bed was stained with something dark. And there were drawings on the walls, crayon drawings of people being eaten by shadows. In the closet, I found more clues. Carved into the wood, the staff remembers their names. Speak them backward to open the way. And below that, Sarah Martinez became Zaniram Haras. David Chen became Neg Divad. I was beginning to understand. The people who worked here, who had become part of the staff, they were the ones who'd been trapped before me. Their names reversed were some kind of key, some kind of password. But I also realized something else. I wasn't the only one being hunted. I could hear others in the maze of chambers. Footsteps, voices, other people who'd found that hidden door and discovered the truth. The hunting began in earnest in the 7th chamber. It was designed to look like a forest, but the trees were made of bone and the leaves were scraps of cloth. I could hear something moving through the undergrowth, something big, something that breathed like a bellows and smelled like sulfur. I hid behind one of the bone trees and watched as it passed. It wasn't human, not anymore. It walked on 4 legs, but its torso was upright, and its face, God, its face was a twisted mix of human features and something else. Something predatory. It was hunting by scent. I could see it sniffing the air, following trails left by previous victims. Some of the trails were fresh. Others led to piles of bones scattered around the chamber. I waited until it moved away, then crept toward what I hoped was an exit. But as I moved, I stepped on something that cracked. A human skull. The sound echoed through the chamber, and the thing turned toward me. I ran, through passages that seemed to rearrange themselves as I moved, past chambers filled with things I don't want to remember, a room where the walls were made of human skin, a pool filled with something that wasn't water and things that weren't fish, a library where the books screamed when you opened them, and always, always the sound of pursuit, not just the creature, but others, the staff, the ones who'd once been victims like me. I found refuge in what looked like a chapel, but the altar was wrong, and the symbols carved into the pews hurt to look at. Still, whatever was chasing me couldn't enter. Something about the place repelled them. That's where I found the final clue. Written in what looked like blood on the altar, the god beneath the water is the heart of the maze. Destroy the heart and the maze dies. But beware, the water remembers all who enter. I realized what I had to do. The attraction, the maze, the hunting ground, it was all connected to something beneath the building. Something that had been sleeping until they built this place on top of it. Something that fed on fear and desperation and the slow dissolution of hope. But to reach it, I had to go deeper, into the parts of the complex that were older than the attraction, older than the building, older than the town itself. The passage down was hidden behind the altar. It led to natural caves carved from limestone. The walls were covered with paintings that were definitely not made by any Native American tribe. They showed the thing that lived beneath the water, the hungry god. And they showed what it did to those who woke it. The paintings were a warning, but they were also a map. I followed the cave system deeper, using the paintings as a guide. The air grew colder and more humid. I could hear water dripping somewhere ahead, and something else, a sound like breathing, like something massive inhaling and exhaling in the darkness. The caves opened into a vast underground chamber. In the center was a pool of water so still it looked like black glass, and floating in that water, it was enormous. Tentacles thick as tree trunks, eyes that glowed with their own light, a mouth that could swallow a car. It was beautiful and terrible and absolutely alien, and it was dreaming. The water around it pulsed with each breath, and I could see things moving in the depths, the remains of everyone who'd been fed to it over the years, not dead, not alive, suspended in some state between existence and oblivion. I understood then. The attraction wasn't just a hunting ground. It was a feeding system, They lured people in, broke their minds, harvested their fear, and then they fed the bodies to the thing in the water. The thing that kept the attraction alive. The thing that made the magic work. But I also understood something else. The creature was vulnerable while it slept. And the water it lived in. The water was the key. I found what I was looking for near the edge of the pool. A series of stone tablets covered in the same symbols I'd seen throughout the complex. But these were different. These were instructions. A ritual to wake the creature, or to put it back to sleep forever. The tablets showed how the first inhabitants of this area had bound the creature centuries ago, how they'd used its power sparingly, carefully, how they'd kept it contained, until someone got greedy. I began the ritual. It required speaking the names of the victims backward, all of them. Sarah Martinez became Zaniram Haras. David Chen became Next Divad, and dozens of others whose names I could see carved into the stone around the pool. With each name, the water grew more turbulent. The creature's breathing became labored, and somewhere above me, I could hear the attraction beginning to shake apart. The thing in the water began to wake. Its eyes opened, and I saw intelligence there. Ancient, alien intelligence. It looked at me with something like curiosity, as if it was wondering why this small creature had dared to disturb its dreams. But I kept reciting the names, kept following the ritual, because I understood now that this wasn't just about escaping. This was about making sure no one else would be trapped here. No one else would be fed to the hungry god. The creature rose from the water. Water cascaded from its massive form as it towered over me. Its tentacles reached toward me, and I could feel the power radiating from it. The power to remake reality, to turn imagination into flesh and fear into substance. But I had completed the ritual, spoken all the names, and the binding was taking hold. The creature let out a sound that was part roar, part scream, part song. The water around it began to drain away, flowing into cracks in the stone floor. Without the water, without the dreams, the creature began to fade. Not dying. Something like that couldn't die, but returning to wherever it had come from. Above me, I could hear the attraction collapsing. The magic that had held it together was gone. I ran. Back through the caves, up the passage, through the chapel. The chambers were dissolving around me, reality reasserting itself. The bone trees became plastic props. The mirrors showed only my reflection. The symbols on the walls faded into painted decorations. I reached the final chamber just as the ceiling began to cave in. The door to the lobby was there, unmarked by magic now. Just a normal exit door. I pushed through it and found myself back on the strip. The building was gone. Where Merlin's Gauntlet had been, there was just an empty lot. No signs, no traces that it had ever existed. Just bare concrete and weeds growing through the cracks. I asked other people on the strip about it. Shop owners, other tourists. No one remembered an attraction called Merlin's Gauntlet. No one had seen the building I'd just escaped from. But I knew it had been real, because I still had the scroll they'd given me. And when I unrolled it, instead of rules for the attraction, there was a message written in my own handwriting. The hungry god sleeps beneath the water, but sleep is not death. And dreams can return. I left Wisconsin Dells that night. Drove straight home without stopping, but I can't stop thinking about what I saw in that pool. The people suspended in the water, the victims who'd been trapped there for years. They're free now. I hope. But sometimes, late at night, I wonder if I really broke the binding, or if I just relocated it, because strange things have been happening in my town. New attractions opening overnight, escape rooms that are too elaborate, too expensive, too convincing, and people have been disappearing. Smart people, curious people, people who think they're clever enough to solve any puzzle. Last week, I got a postcard in the mail. No return address. Just a picture of a new attraction called the Dragon's Labyrinth. And on the back, in handwriting that looked like my own, "The hunt never ends. It just finds new ground." I don't know if I really saved those people. I don't know if I really stopped the creature. But I know one thing for certain. I'm never going back to Wisconsin Dells. And neither should you. Because some attractions aren't meant to entertain. They're meant to feed. And once they know you exist, once they have your scent, they'll find you wherever you go. The water remembers. The hungry god dreams. And somewhere, in some new place, in some new form, the hunt continues. Don't go looking for it. Don't try to be clever. Because if you do, you might just find that you're not the hunter. You're the prey.